you want me to hand you this? You want me to hand it to you? Okay. Deal. All right, if everybody could find their seats, please. For what? All right, everybody, welcome back. So it's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker. This is Deb Kleinman. Deb has been instrumental in contributing to several of the collaboratives at the very beginning stages. So we're glad to have her back. I hope she talks a little bit more about CP&R, which is the training that Steve talked about a little bit, but it's really valuable. So I'm going to go ahead and pass this on to Deb. I have 15 minutes.
Morning, everyone. Oh my God, it sounds even worse when I'm talking in a microphone. I normally wouldn't use a microphone, but as you can see, I think it's the only way I can project. So my apologies. Good morning. I hope you've had a great couple days. I'm sorry to miss it for obvious reasons. So I've been tasked with talking about how to move from big ideas to actually getting her done. Before I do that, I will mention that we are still recruiting for CP&R. Collaboration program in natural resources. I'm the director. Steve is the, I don't know what to call Steve, the original wise man or something. If you are interested, I actually only have a few slots left. So please reach out to me sooner rather than later and we can talk. So, okay, let me say the take home I want you to get from my 15 minutes of fame is if you have a strategy, but you don't do anything, why are you even doing the thing? And if you're doing things, but you don't have any strategy, you have no idea where you're going to end up, right? It might be somewhere really bad. So for the last few years, working with some of the collaboratives here, and then increasingly with some of my other clients, I've been playing around with processes that can allow you to do both simultaneously. So you're not ignoring the strategy, you're really focusing on what Steve shared about common definition of the problem, what's your purpose, what's your shared vision for your community. But at the same time, you're not waiting 3 months, 6 months, a year to actually get going on stuff. And those two things are often in tension. When I was trying to be too rigid about, we got to define the problem, we need to do all these things first, people got really mad at me because they were coming together not to do the things I dork out about, but actually to make change in their community, right? So this sketch that I did an hour ago is what I've been using and testing and playing with in a number of communities. So since I only have 15 minutes, I'm not going to dwell too long on any of it. I'm happy to talk more about this with any of you. I'm having a lot of fun with it. The upper left in purple is where a lot of the foundational stuff that Steve talked about just now happens, right? Like you do want to have a reason to come together. You do want to be rowing roughly in the same direction. You want to be on the same page with the kind of community and the kinds of activities that you want to have happen, right? So those conversations are foundational. They have to happen. You don't always finish them before you move on to the next step. So I don't know if Steve showed our beautiful linear, one box leads to the next. Did you show the? Okay. It gets really messy, right? This work is messy. So we don't have this cleanly wrapped up necessarily before we move on to the next step, but you want to have some idea of what that is. So that's where that starts and happens. And then essentially there's 4 steps and they don't happen in a smooth line. It's like loops and circles and feedback loops and all the things. But the first step is the fun step, right? It's what could we do based on why you come together and the kind of community, the kind of activities you're trying to cultivate. You brainstorm, you throw all the ideas out on the table. It's really fun, it's really creative. It can include things that are already happening, things that are your pipe dreams, everything in between. Everything goes on the table. Yay, right? That's fun. The second step, and then I'm going to explain the stuff on the periphery. Second step is you transition from what could we be doing into what should we be doing. And really the first filter here is, are there ideas that are on the table that have nothing to do with your purpose, that don't move you towards the future you're trying to create, right? So they might be great ideas, but you set them aside for someone else to take up. So that's your first filter. And then you start prioritizing, right? There's a lot of different ways to do this. Steve might have referred to some of them. The one that I'm using most these days in service of having it be kind of rapid and not long and drawn out is a 2x2 matrix. One axis is impact, one axis is ease of execution. Impact can mean a lot of different things, but fundamentally it's about, is it going to move you closer to your goals, right? And then ease might be money, it might be people power, it might be, I don't know, there's an old building that can be retrofitted, it could be anything, right? But like, is it going to be relatively easy to at least get started? And the sweet spot is what, there's a book that actually I've adapted and tweaked for this purpose called Strategic Doing. They call it the big easy. Especially in the beginning, what you want to shoot for are those ideas that both have a significant impact and can be done based on resources that you have available today, right? That's the big easy. So ideally, you're identifying those, but a group could decide, you know what, we've been working together for 10 years. We really want to go for gold. And so you could say this is going to be really hard, but we know we can do it. And it's going to have a really big splash. So you could make your own choices, but especially if it's a new group, getting some good wins early on is really important. So from there, you go into what will we do, right? This is where the rubber starts to hit the road. Based on those ideas that rise to the top, where are you going to start? And this is where you start to make really concrete action plans, right? Who, what, when, where, put people in charge, you identify resources, et cetera, et cetera. This doesn't mean that it's a 5-year plan to get you to completion. It's an action plan that gets you started, right? It might, like if you're doing a construction project, it might be a plan to do some initial community charrettes, or it might be design conversation, something like that, right? Like what's the first big step? That's your action plan. You're not trying to map out a Gantt chart for 5 years, good Lord. And then you move into the true action phase, right? So whatever it is that you've decided to do, you set up a team that's focused on doing it, and you meet regularly. The sort of sweet spot is every 30 days, but it could be 45, but it's rapid. And you're talking about, you're going through your action plan. What's happened? What can we check off? What's happening now? Are there any problems? And what needs to happen next, right? And that group is hyper-focused. Their only job is to make sure the work is getting done. And then it's done, and you celebrate, and then you move to the next thing. Okay, so in this model, there's your core team. I think all collaboratives in Wyoming at least have some kind of core team that's made up of a broad group of stakeholders. Understand that work does not get done by groups of 30 or 40 or 50 people, right? It just doesn't happen. Groups that are smaller are the ones that are going to be able to get the work done. So for any of these stages, you're going to launch what I call doing or action teams, right? Those can be learning teams, they can be advocacy and outreach teams, or they can be project, right? Like actually getting the work done teams. So for example, at the what could we do stage, that you might set up a team to go out and get input and ideas from various stakeholders, right? And their job is to get ideas and bring them back to the group. So you might call that a learning team. Moving into the what should we do phase, it might be that you need some data, you need some research, you need someone to go out and identify best practices, or engineering firms that can come in and consult, right? So you set up a small team, they go out and they do that, and they bring the results of their work back. And then the what will we do phase, obviously that's your project teams, right? That's the teams you set up to actually get the projects done and on the road and moving forward. Let's see, prioritize. The other thing I'll say, make sure I'm hitting all my highlights. There's a couple really nice things about this model. One is this is just sort of a general sketch of how it could look. It's endlessly flexible and adaptable. So you can change it and tweak it and make it your own in whatever ways work for you. The second thing is that it acknowledges and leverages resources, people, money, buildings, infrastructure, whatever that you have on hand today, and mobilizes it in service of your work. And so, your core team has networks that it can tap into. That group is pretty set, but those teams, the action teams, can expand based on the work to be done. And that's where you can tap into much broader networks. People who have expertise, people who have money, people who love your community, who fly out from, I don't know, New York City and just want to write you a check. Like that's the sweet spot, right? So it allows you to expand into those networks, get people involved, get people moving, but you still have a core group that provides consistency and leadership over the long haul. Okay. So the other thing is, once you get established, and I'm working on this with a couple groups in Colorado right now, you can really move into an annual cycle. So a lot of you or all of you live in small communities, and there's only so many bodies to do the work. And a lot of communities, people are going to like 10 meetings when really they only want to go to one, and the meeting might be really badly run, so they really only want to go to one. So once you get things set, there's sort of an easy annual cycle that you move into. So your core group might get to a place where you're meeting 4 times a year, right? You have one meeting that's sort of an annual strategy setting, like what do we want to accomplish in a flexible way? What are the big challenges and problems we need to be paying attention to, annual meeting. And then you meet quarterly to update your plan, to monitor what's happening, to support your action teams that are doing the work. Maybe there's a conflict that blows up and you need to strategize. Maybe there's legislation that you want to think about influencing. So you're meeting quarterly, 4 meetings a year instead of 12. It sounds pretty great, right? And then your doing teams meet at whatever frequency they need to meet to get the job done. So that's up to them. And then they're reporting back. So there's communication happening. So that's sort of the fundamental thing I wanted to share with you. I talked too much, so I have a couple minutes to share a couple stories. I'm using this in 2 communities in Colorado. One, we've been sort of working through stuff for about 6 months now. So we're doing the charter for 6 months, not because they're arguing about it like certain communities I won't mention in Wyoming that I've worked with, but because they're working on the charter as they're getting the work done. They launched a couple of initial teams to go out and one was doing some feasibility for a construction project on a river zone. One was actually more coordinating. There was one organizational member who needed some extra support getting their feet on the ground. And so another team was set up to support them to make sure they had the capacity and resources to be able to participate fully. They're a really crucial member of that group. And then there was another piece that was a summer project, right? And it's river work, so it's float trips and stuff like that. I told them I would waive my fee in exchange for being invited on the float trip. So that's happening, right? So there's a doing team, research team, and sort of a support fundraising team. And we're just at the point where we're transitioning into that annual cycle. So there was more frequent conversations initially, and now we're ratcheting back a little bit so people can get, actually have time to do their day job and get the work done. I'm going to stop there. Maybe 1 minute for questions. I covered a lot. Awesome. Thanks, guys. I'm going to hand it over.
Thank you, Deb. I just want to acknowledge that all of these topics could be a full day discussion. And so we kind of strategically have these really short presentations to kind of give you a taste of some of the topics that we would like to continue these conversations as we move on through these collaboratives. So our next speaker is Zulima Lopez. So Zulima, if you want to come up here. Zulima is a member of the Natrona County Outdoor Recreation Collaborative, which is our newest collaborative, and she is from Casper.
Good morning. How was everybody this morning? Are we awake? That's fantastic. Good. It's been a great couple of days and I'm really excited to be here talking to you a little bit. And actually, all of the presentations over the last couple of days have really already talked about some of what I'm been asked to talk about. And that's how do we build trust and how do we build partnerships among our collaboratives? And so just so that I know who I'm kind of talking to, how many of you in here work for local, state, or federal government? Okay. So for some of you, I'm going to be preaching to the choir a little bit, but for those of you who are not government, I am with the government and I am here to help. You've heard that a lot. But the honest truth is that I think your government partners are really here to help. And so making sure that your government partners, whether it's at the city level, the county level, the state level, or the federal level, have a seat at that table. We've talked about the importance of making sure that all the right people are at the table. I think excluding those government partners is something that some people are inclined to do because of the bureaucracy, because of the red tape, because of the challenges that often come with government work. But excluding them from the table, I think, is going to cause more problems in the long run than it actually solves for your collaboratives and for the projects that you're trying to move forward. So I just want to say that it is hard when you're a government official and there's this sort of inherent distrust of government, right, and government workers. There's a lot of rhetoric that we're not here to help, that we're here to obstruct, that we have our own personal agendas or political agendas, and that we're not interested in the same things that you guys are interested in. But that's really not the case in most places where I've worked or places that I've worked with. You know, your government partners are out there on the trails with you. They're mountain bikers, they're skiers, they're, you know, they ride horses. They love all the same things that you do, and they live in the communities that you live, and they want it to be wonderful just like you do. So understanding that you have a partner that shares interests with you and your government leaders is really important. And hopefully you will reach out to those folks and get them involved in your conversations and make them champions and advocates with you so that they can help move things along for you. Because as Steve mentioned in his presentation this morning, you really need 3 types of people at the table, right? And 2 of those are those who can affect decisions and those who have the authority and the resources to make things happen. Well, guess what? A lot of times that's your government partners, you know, right? They're the ones that can stop projects because of various reasons. They're also ones that can help advance projects because of various reasons. And they're often the ones that will have the resources and the authority to help move those projects along. So it's really important that you bring those people to the table early and often, that you get them to help you get on board with projects and champion. So for me, as a government leader, as a servant leader, I'm actually in my role as Parks and Rec Director for the city of Casper only for about 1.5 years, but I've worked for the city of Casper for almost 25 years. And my role historically, because I worked in engineering, I worked in utilities, I worked as a city's risk manager for 7 years. That was fun through COVID. But my role has always kind of been in the periphery. And so I joke with some of my friends and colleagues that in the last 1.5 years in Parks and Recreation, I've met more people and been more public facing than the remainder of my career in city government. And so this has been my opportunity to really get out into the community, to develop relationships, to build partnerships, and to try to create trust among our community with the leaders that are here to help you. And so I think that part of the challenge for the government, people that are involved, is getting people to trust us. And I have found that the best way to do that is to just be very, very transparent, really lay my cards out on the table, help people to understand what I can and cannot do for them early, so that they don't feel like I'm an obstructionist, they do feel like I'm a partner, but they understand that we are working within the constraints of the law and other challenges that we have at times. So really that transparency piece, I think, becomes really, really important. And I think if you don't feel like your government partners are being transparent, you need to ask hard questions. You need to be willing to just say, hey, tell me about this. Or if you don't understand something or something's not clear to you, ask why. I think sometimes we assume people know why, or that they understand some of the laws and bureaucracy that goes along with the pace of progress, which is really slow, especially in government. But sometimes we don't realize that people don't really understand that, and we have to explain it, and we need to make sure that they understand the why behind some of the decisions that are made. One of the comments that was made yesterday during our wrap-up discussion was when the question was asked, what can we do to progress from this conference? One of the people said, find a way to say yes. And I loved that because, you know, in my role with the city of Casper and 3 years of leadership training, I found two things that I really love. Yes, but, and yes, and. And so I always try to approach all projects that come to me with a yes, but this is what it's going to have to look like, or yes, but these are some of the challenges that we're going to have to overcome. And then the growth mindset in us says yes, and that's when you get really excited about projects and say, yes, and we can also do this. And yes, and this can also become this. And yes, and we can also include these people that are really going to help us to launch this project forward. And so finding a way to say yes is really important. And hopefully you don't feel like your government officials are only finding a way to say no, because that's really not the case. So I think that it's important to remember that some of the most developed and the best ideas that we can have can fall flat on their face with one fatal flaw, right? And so again, if you're not bringing all of the right people to the table, you may progress really far into a project and think you got it nailed. And then that one thing happens that completely derails what can often be years of work, right? Or certainly months of work. And so, so I think that making sure you're bringing the right people to the table becomes important. We often, in my organization, at least, not so much in our collaborative, but we're pretty young still, we're learning. The SWOT analysis with stakeholders can really go far in doing that. It can help you to identify those strengths, those weaknesses, those opportunities, and most importantly, probably sometimes is those threats. And those threats, identifying those threats can really help you to make sure that you've got the right people at the table, because those are the people that you need to hear from. Those naysayers, those obstructionists, those people that could derail your project need to be there to talk to you about what the challenges are, what the why they don't like the project, or what impact it's going to have on them that they are so negative about, so that you can vet through that. And so we've talked a lot about conflict and how to resolve conflict among collaboratives when you're trying to make progress. And really, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of having that one person, that really challenging individual that says no to everything, is really important to have at the table, because hearing that point of view is going to help you find a way to mitigate that risk or circumvent that challenge in a way that hopefully is productive. And so I know in my role at the city of Casper, certainly outdoor rec plays a role, but we are a city, we're a little more urban. And so we do all recreation, including traditional, ball and stick sports and things like that. If you think mountain bikers are tough, try pickleballers. Holy cow. And so really learning to collaborate and bring people with various interests together so that we advance what we all want, which is to make really great communities that people want to live in and that people want to come and visit. And so I've learned a lot in the last year and a half, and I'm looking forward to the work that the Natrona County Outdoor Rec Collaborative is doing. I wish that there were more of us here today, But we'll take back some great information that we've learned to the group. We're lucky enough to have Angela Emery on our team, so and on our steering committee, so we appreciate that. And I guess I'll just open it up to any questions. Yes.
So, and I only know this just from listening in on the collaborative meeting. So in work, I've heard discussions around how Casper uses the one
Mhm.
on some outdoor recreation projects. Can you maybe talk about how that happened in your community, and maybe I don't know if that exists with other communities. I'm sure that might apply.
Okay, thank you. So did everybody hear the question about 1 cent? Yeah, so that's our penny tax. Of course, the state tax is 4%. In Casper, we only have a 5th cent. We have a optional 1 cent that's voted on every 4 years. And in the city of Casper, we do try to devote a portion of that penny tax to recreation. Again, some of that is more traditional or less traditional outdoor recreation stuff. It's the tennis and the athletics and the rec center, swimming pools, things like that. But absolutely, it also includes, trying to improve rec amenities throughout our community. And so the city of Casper contributes quite a lot to our trail partners, the Platte River Trails Trust, to expand our trail network in the community. We in the city of Casper own a lot of the recreation assets, and then those assets are leased to user groups who then operate and manage them. And so we own a skeet range, we own a shooting complex for like long range rifle shooting. We have an air modelers facility. We have a BMX track. We have a speedway, a race car speedway. We have a motocross facility. And so all of these facilities are city-owned properties that are leased to the user groups that enjoy those activities. And so we do also try to infuse 1 cent funds into projects to improve those city-owned facilities as well, hoping that our partners will also bring some funding to the table, which can be a challenge. But the challenge, I think, with a lot of the funding piece is that there's never enough money to go around, right? And so that's part of what causes the conflict in our collaborative, at least, is that, we have all of these wonderful projects that we want to complete, but there's not enough money to do it. And then getting a group of people with different rec interests to agree on what the priorities should be, even if it might not be yours, can be a challenge. And so we still have some work to do there, but certainly, again, the city of Casper wants to be a good partner, and part of the way that we do that is to try to infuse some funds where we can.
You talked a little bit about Bow-Routt, because if I'm not mistaken, it's the only ski area in Wyoming that's actually owned and run by the city.
Yes, I think that you are right. So the city of Casper does own Hogadon Basin Ski Area. It is an alpine ski area on Casper Mountain. If you've never been, you should come. It is a gem in our community. We love it. So about 5 years ago, we invested a significant amount of money to build a new lodge. So again, if you've never been, it's a beautiful facility. We are a unique ski area in that we're upside down. Our lodge is on the top of the hill. People ski down and lift up. That's a little rare and can cause some challenges in terms of transportation, because people have to drive all the way up the mountain to ski. And this year we closed the road 7 times because we got too much snow, which is weird to close a ski area because of too much snow, but that did happen to us several times this year. Our Hogadon operation, our ski area operation is actually subsidized. We have a goal to recover about 65% of the cost of that operation, but that just means that the city of Casper General Fund is paying 35% of the operation every year, which is several $100,000 annually. And so, it's a great contribution to our community. And we've all kind of talked about how COVID actually did wonderful things for outdoor recreation, and that certainly applies in the ski industry as well. We were fortunate in Wyoming that our restrictions were not quite as strict as some other areas. And so we saw a lot of Colorado skiers coming to Casper for the first time, and they loved it. And so a lot of them are coming back. So we're managing the growth as well in that area, trying to figure out how we accommodate the new clientele, the new guests that we have coming to our area each year. But we're excited. We're excited about it, and just looking again at projects to help expand our capacity and our ability to give the guests the best experience we can. Yes, sir. Yes. Our 1 cent is an optional sales tax that covers the operations of all city government. Yep. Yeah, great question. So actually, in advance of our 1 cent cycle every 4 years, the city puts out a survey to the community that allows them to vote on how they want to see those dollars spent. And then we analyze the data and then attempt to put figures to it that correspond to the responses in the citizen survey. And so once that citizen survey is completed, and we apply the dollar, we make an estimate on what we think the penny tax is going to earn over the 4-year period. We apply those dollars to the survey, and then our city council actually passes a resolution, which is our contract with the community, that this is how we're going to spend their dollars. And thankfully, recreation generally ranks among those interests that guarantees us at least some funding. The hard reality is that streets, fire, police, and critical infrastructure like water and sewer are always going to rise above recreation, right? And so we're fighting for those dollars, and now trying to find creative ways to convince our council, our elected officials, that because of the mental health aspects and just the physical and mental wellness that comes with recreation, more dollars really need to be put towards that in order to just improve the health of our communities all around. And so starting to make those critical arguments that in many ways recreation is just as important as some of the other critical government functions is important. Angela.
Certainly in Casper, which about it, that is the thing. I'm completely that penny, and they've been very successful with their freeway efforts. That's something we look to Casper organization certainly does to try to convince our citizens that that extra 1 penny would be worth it for the facilities that we might be able to bring to our town. So I know that the 3 word, the tax word is for both. Some areas certainly in Casper. We tried it, the city tried it a few years ago, and it didn't go over well, but I think there's still a hope that we might try it again.
Yeah, and in the conversation yesterday about, well, actually, I think it was Wednesday, about creative funding sources. We're hoping that maybe we can rally our community around a special use recreation tax that will help us to build some infrastructure.
Just to piggyback on that, club members and my support and we use that extra penny tax for roads and infrastructure, knowing that lender already fill more pockets. Then we take a big lift to get folks to say, okay, let's give it an additional profit of that 5. Lenders also loudly drop the track. I think there's an opportunity to involve in that community to convince folks this is
ma'am.
Are you at all interested in developing a team camping experience where kids won't be camping in campers or buildings, just in tents, on some grazing land on private ranch land?
Okay, let me make sure that I understand your question. So are you asking in my capacity and my role at the city? Absolutely, absolutely. I've got some cards we can get together.
Any
Okay,
other questions, please? Yeah, just grab
Yeah.
a card from Zulima, it
Come
sounds
back.
like. All right, we are going to bring up Sarah Brown Matthews, and she is a member of the Southeast Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Collaborative. And I know quite a few folks, if you were here yesterday, you heard her speak. So I will let her take it away on discussing budgets with projects.
Thank you, Bryn. I'm hoping that I can just project. I'm an old
Oh,
school
yeah.
teacher. And so I walked down the road with my head on my shoulder and saying, "That's an important topic." You didn't know that my old girls were taking it on me. I had to laugh, quite honestly, when they sent me time project budgeting for the average and like that. The wrong room, don't be in the room average. Everybody already knows how to budget, so I'm not sure what I can say about it. But am happy to have you time this morning because as a middle child and my personality in my family, budgeting, and this kind of thing are really important to me on a personal level. I think especially in the sense of the projects that we're all talking about trying to move forward. So, you guys, is that something? Where is it? Oh, there we go. So, honestly, I grew up here in Larry and at school. When I started to think about budgeting, I thought, oh yeah, kind of memorizing the table, but you know, that's good, but I think that's a lot of numbers on it. That's in my math. So take that into consideration as well. I think the best thing we can do with our collaborative is recognize there are lots of tools out there that are really simple and easy to do. Your budget does not have to be like government budget. It shouldn't be complicated. I personally really like the Excel budget template, but here are some suggestions for you to think about. Don't make it harder than it needs. The other thing I thought about is why budget, because as we've all talked about today, you know, we often say the fun part of this of the day meeting, what you want to do, what something to pull off, but it is really important to have a budget that you can use for secure financing, you can use for pitching to investors, donors, and grants. My background really in fundraising, so that's used to be tracking your income and spending and measuring your success, and also as these opportunities arise, like quite a bill, you help to plan ahead and think about are we going to spend that to add staff or to add what I can do based on our budget. The other thing I really believe in is that and really just recognizing when you use the word budget, it's a scarcity word. Kind of like saying, you know, you're saying to yourself with this language, that you're putting yourself in a position that you don't really want to be in. So if that happens to be a trigger for you, think about it differently. Use different language and say, you know, this is our investment plan, or we're going to spend this our spending plan. Change your language so that it doesn't trigger negative emotions as you're going through it. The other big thing is, for me, thinking about needs versus wants. So last night I got home and had a great day, kind of tired, at what point do I need to get up? I could be budgeting my time, you know, because I said, well, I need to get that. That's in me, right? I'm not going to go there. And I want to see my favorite and have enough cost. And then I thought, well, that means I get up and that's it. So then budgeting my sleep time and my morning time, and then decide what do I need to want. Right? Like, okay, let me put that on this. And then address the need first, and then think about it once. So do that deliberately with your project. And then focus on the essentials, but celebrate all the needs you can meet and really each one Be very good. Here's another one. Don't assume that your budget is gonna stay the way it started out. Really make sure that you're leaving room in your budget for surprises. And if you have flexibility, you have kind of a safety net, get a, opportunity to look at your budget. Because inevitably things are gonna change, places are gonna kick in, all those kind of things. Revisit it regularly, and again, it's just a living document. Don't feel like something sitting with the that commandment. So, this is for all of you that work for the government. I know it's a lot to you, but I wanted to keep this slide in there, mostly because I just wanted to say, for this set situation, for our collaborative for projects on Pilot Hill, and the Brown specific budget we might be setting up for, like trails and build better, like I have a couple of sub budgets that I can share with the board, and they might have two categories. So it might only be that I have two things that I need to worry about. Just try to simplify so you don't get overwhelmed. And again, know that this is a living document. It can be changed and moved. Within your revenue, you know, everybody's going to have revenue. Try to keep in mind how you create a multi-leg tool. We talked a little bit about this in 6 or 7 taxes. We talked about that, you know, partnering with organizations, maybe there's a current income that thinking, but as we all know, the camping experiences, sitting on a one-legged stool that lasts very long. You really need 2 to 3, at least 4 legs, or 3, and sometimes 4 legs to the table. So think about that. Set goals for revenue, and also think about when I say budget seasons. I mean, in our budget, at least in Pilot Hill, we use the majority of our spending in the first 2 quarters this year, and we bring in revenue the last 2 quarters this year. So keep that in mind. You're going to want to cash flow understanding of the budget as you're setting them up. And then with expenses, again, going back to the needs and the wants, are some of your needs fixed costs or are they variable costs? Insurance costs can go up or is it fixed? Also with wants, are they fixed or variable? Are they one time or are they ongoing? And that's a piece of consideration. And then once again, what are the seasons? So I'm just going to continue looking on kind of things as an example. I tend to find that for a lot of projects like this, it helps to start with expenses and then go to revenue. It may not for you. So again, this is just how I'm approaching it. Sometimes I have people understand. So I have my revenue and my expenses, but you know, you can go back and forth. There's no right or wrong in this. With us, we have just 4 categories. We could have 10. I try to simplify it. There are 4 categories. They're basically admin, fundraising, property maintenance, and then RBL value. And then under those, we have subcategories. Don't forget that there's any staffing costs very on your credit category. And don't minimize that. The other thing that organizations tend to do is say, well, we don't want to know that we're spending money fundraising. Actually, we want them to know that it does cost you money to generate the money that and don't try to wait in that. The real need is we have a budget for transparency. The first thing people can answer, if they think you're not being transparent, if they want to budget. So make sure that you have that budget, make sure that people that you can say that they get to people and they're in the other part of staff to get the money budget. You know, pay for something specific. Might be a study like that. The for one of the things that we have to kind of feel that most Asian people have is violation. And for us, we really went down for a long time instead of 0-1 and determine that we really, at this point in our process, we believe for several reasons, we have applicants that donated to us by our community that are holding in trust. And if we ended up in a lawsuit because and training on the downside and Ruckelshaus again, then we can actually make up the trail and we would use it for coverage and we are doing that. So that's an example that for me, I'm going to go on to revenue categories again. I'm going to emphasize how to think about different ways to create different ways. School donations include for us general public donations, also proposals, and sometimes it is. We have a 25K raise happening on June 3rd, and I don't know if we will share. We won't get a whole lot of money out of that, but it's the way we do. You know, I don't like somebody to say it as a party. There are always grants. Grants come to our streams. Parents got those. We also have earned income, and we still use that on. But we also might eventually give where there will be pressure. I mean that now that we want to do what I said on the property and the policy and other. And then the one that I think a lot of organizations often forget about is money. We're really lucky in this community. We have the corporations think what they got in the way that tax year, but they have their employees net. We don't need to, and we can on top of that when we $25,000 in time. So that helps us think about okay, how can we reach out to and want to partner with it. Can't necessarily have tax in their budget, but not using the time for it. The WCC every year, we track their back by doing training. Maybe all of them are work. So they really did a wonderful part. The other thing that I will emphasize again is just in addition to your annual budget or your plan budget, make sure that you're thinking about cash flow and the great unknowns, because you don't want to be in a position where you're sitting down with your community or your funder or your agency, whatever it might be, something to say, guess what, now let's do drawings with bigger lines because really we got to figure out. We've got to really think ahead about working and determine what is our time taking. Might we just plan a year in advance, I don't think that's probably our experience. And get something to find in place for the next part. In the fundraising world, you'll never probably announce a public campaign to have that. So that's just the reality. The other thing that I think is important is always to, at least if you're in a bigger picture like we are, we try to think about how we somehow turn out into a goal. And maybe we'll need that one first year, maybe not, but always keep in mind that there's gas and things in the place. And we can have a big and the goal of that. Questions? I'm going to keep forgotten. I love this because I thought, you know, that's what's going to happen in all the collaborative. We're going to say, oh, well, yeah. Are there any thoughts you want to share or questions you might ask? So again, I and when you talk about that, I don't think I believe that events really are here to go to the community. And that's the fundraising event. They bring you to your house. They welcome you to your tent. They get on the community with fans. So critical for every organization. and for great way to do that. The problem is it's just a lot of staff time and that really practice instruction. And they also take, resources in terms of part of. So generally when you have a nonprofit organization that's the subject of it, because they committed to doing this and building it up to the community, and one thing everybody wants to do. So the first year they not training, second year they training, third year they start getting a little revenue, and as time goes on that everything goes down and down and then they can have it. And it mentioning, think about your audience. Most of our users are kind of, which is really boring and something I think my attention is kind of getting and stuff. So it might be more fun to do something practical, sharing that time. I'm out of time. I tried to do something fun on property, but I decided to have a goal on it. I might have what kind of time is nice to get that maybe people say like you can change for not that teams that are or that there are a lot of teams that are on. But because those are the ways you actually are affected. So if you got some that they would again think about it really in terms of probably expanding on capacity to like a bigger team. Bernie, questions about how you set up a budget? Yeah.
Already when the top is like the biggest prize of shop, and coming into this, given projects that you were heavily piled up.
Oh, yes, that's the top discussion is really interesting for me. And I don't want to say that because our friends in the room here, we are one of the most effective cost using discussion in some objects, but just something, the cost of our plans and the price of the 5 years. I think this year we're likely to get for one technique over doing the homework and the way you're setting up the other is really important. So you may not go back to the those processes. So things better in line with that $100. But usually they tend to talk about it. I also think that I have been surprised by the expenses associated with the committee and approval processes that we have. So for me, sitting back and okay, we need to have a collaborative table. We need to have it approved by the city and county, but I think departments recognizing that there are issues that kind of why I feel that we need to have it. And we always did. Sometimes it's really hard to I realize nothing else. Again, I can transfer the importance of taking off the guard that feel that as a good organization for 2 years in my career, we are being so heavy with candidate on the federal level that fluctuating that I would really have such a marketing that we will not only training staff unknown or important practice, but it's also draining a lot of staff. And the one thing that I worry about is that the funding of my kids is capacity and keep around always trying to constantly the easiest peanuts achieving within the organization. But we can't just say that a lot can't say that right. Can't say that about that is what I not what I, you know, the other reason about them is frankly that sometimes by that purpose and the use that but it is, I know that I can talk about, you know, so again, isn't that $1 million? So we can get a little motivated. And I'm not sure that's very well. It's really very personal. There are quite a few subjects that and the other thing you said, about is playing so the one who did that is all these I'm going to contact the staff and actually count that I was thinking. So that is a way to make that part of the down in the course of that I know I think more than my time. Thank everybody for putting up with the